Tensions run high at a boarding school when a long-standing rivalry between two teachers bubbles up to the surface. This one leads into psychological mind games, and no, there's no killer dolls running around in Sidney Lumet's Child's Play. Well, not unless we missed something. Welcome everyone to the Collector's Cut. I am Peter, and joining me as always is David.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Not that movie. Welcome everyone. This is a movie podcast, and we are wrapping up our first season of Sidney Lumet movies with the 1972 film Child's Play, not to be confused with the Chucky movie from 1988. So, yes, that's it. We've done the jokes. We don't have to make any more Chucky jokes, okay?
We're recording this very shortly before Halloween. I was fully intending to go out to a Halloween store and get a Chucky mask for the joke, but didn't happen.
Should have bought a whole doll, just had it sitting in your lap.
Yeah, just in the background.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it falls over in the middle.
Yeah. Although this one does have some, not spooky, but there's a little bit of tension in this. There's like a almost horror movie level of something. Anyway, so yes, we're talking about Child's Play 1972. The basic premise of this is that we're at a Catholic boarding school for boys, and we have two teachers who are kind of rivals in a sense, or at least one hates the other anyway. There's not so much reciprocated, but you have one teacher who's kind of easygoing, the kids all seem to like him, and then you've got one who's kind of the hard ass who gives all the boys a hard time and everyone hates him. And then our third main character, played by Beau, who's like the one actor in here that I really recognized, he's like this new young teacher who used to be a student at this school about 10 years ago, and he's come in to be the new PE teacher. So that's the basic setup of the film, and there's obviously some drama between the main kind of inciting thing that's going on though is that the boys in the school are basically just getting violent. There's just more and more incidents happening of them fighting, of hurting each other, and that's kind of escalating, which is going to what propels everything else. So that's the basic gist of the movie. We will start spoiler free, of course, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we get into the spoilers, and if you're enjoying the show on YouTube, hit the like button for us. It helps us out a bunch, as does giving us 5 stars on your podcast app, and you can get bonuses and help support the show by joining our Patreon or YouTube membership, but I'll tell you more about that at the end of the episode. So, yes. I already did the premise. David, what did you think of Child's Play?
So, I mean, this is the last one of the season. Up until this point, we had pretty good, and then the last one was a bit disappointing. I think that this one is better than the last one, but not by much. I think that this one has I think the biggest problem I had really going into it is that the beginning of the movie promises a very certain kind of exploration, a certain kind of movie, I guess, and it's present like all the marketing and stuff as far as I can see, like the ads and everything else. It's really making me feel like we're supposed to get a very specific type of movie, and then it just never follows through on that promise. And the movie we do end up getting is not bad by any means, but it feels like they're always kind of hovering around that idea of we're going to resolve this, we're going to explore that. And by the time we get around to it in the end, it just feels so much weaker than I think was initially set up for. The acting is solid. I really do like the characters in this. I think that's always going to be one of Sidney Lumet's stronger traits, is that he knows how to direct actors. He gets a great performance out of them. But beyond that, I think what really set me here is looking into this. I did see it was based off of a stage play, and the play apparently did numbers. Like it almost completely swept the Tonys for that year. So it did a fantastic job. And it was adapted very quickly. It was only like 2 years after it premiered that it was turned into this movie. So I feel the stage play aspect to it. I feel a little bit of how this might do better there. But I don't know. By the time it hit the end here, I felt kind of a similar thing of what we were feeling last time, where it feels like it's trying to make a really strong, poignant point at something, but ultimately it just falls a little bit flat of making me care about it enough for that to really sit and land in a strong way. But yeah, it's still not a horrible movie by any means. It was a bit lacking for me.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the sentiment that it's better than the last one. I think it has some stronger characters than the last movie did, which is something the last movie was lacking as well. But I do also think this one falters a little bit by the end, especially since I think one of the main elements of the movie, which is this idea of what the boys keep doing in the school, it kind of feels like that somewhat goes to the side, and by the time it comes back round at the end of the movie, I actually wasn't entirely sure about some of the way it works and what exactly how this has transpired, and it made the intention and the meaning behind it a little bit murky for me. And I'm like, I can maybe read into some metaphorical ideas here, but I don't really understand how it worked in the world per se. So that's something. I will say one thing you did say there though is you talked about this being based on a play and feeling that, and it's not so much that I'm going to disagree with that per se, but I do want to point out that Lumet, like the first two movies we did this season, were based on plays, and 12 Angry Men was based on a play. Lumet has turned plays into great movies, so there is absolutely no reason why that should be, a hindrance or be something that lessens it compared to, because his best movie's still based on a play. That's 12 Angry Men. So
I don't think it lessens it at all, but I do think, especially when we got into I'm gonna blank on the name until I have it pulled up here. Hold on. The second one we did for this season, Long Day's Journey into Night.
Yes.
That one, I like on paper, I was literally saying, I feel how much of a play this is. Like, it definitely felt that. Whereas something like 12 Angry Men, it doesn't feel like it is coming from a play. It feels like it was designed for the film, and it feels like it was very carefully crafted in that. This one, it's closer to the middle, but it still sways slightly more into the, I see this more as a stage play in certain aspects than how it was adapted over into movie specifically.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's funny because like I kind of knew like halfway through that I like this is better made than the last movie was, but I'm not necessarily feeling that much for it either. So it's kind of just a middling to decent kind of territory. And I think there is still some good cinematography. That's the other thing that I think Lumet does very well, and we've been saying that with every movie. I think it has better cinematography than the last movie as well. Just not like by a great ton, but there's definitely a few more moments here where I really felt the camera work and I felt the framing and how he was presenting some of the scenes. He's very good at that, and that's still true here. It's just that I don't think, and I don't want to say the source material per se, because maybe the play is better at actually handling like what the story's doing, but certainly as a script for the film, I find it a little lacking in some of the points it's get, because ultimately it becomes more about this rivalry between the two teachers and the fact that one's convinced the other one's like harassing him, and we won't get into that until spoilers to talk about what's actually going on there, but that's what it really becomes about, to the point where the stuff with the students kind of feels like an afterthought for a while. Which is weird, given how much focus it gets. We literally start the movie with one of those scenes, and so big things happen in that first act, but then it almost is just like background to like what's going on, and the connections to what's going on that ultimately come up feel really loose to me. They feel really kind of wonky and poorly defined.
Well, I think for me, the biggest issue is that it leads with the students being violent, and not even just the initial scene. Like, it feels like the first 15, 20 minutes, it really heavily hammers on that of the students are being incredibly violent with each other. And then it stops and goes into the teacher rivalry thing. But the issue is the student stuff is by far and away so much more interesting than this teacher rivalry thing. You lead with this incredibly interesting thing and drop it, and then what you replace it with is nowhere near as intriguing to an audience. It gets there, it builds over time, but it immediately is just this hard cliff drop off where we have to build back up to that level of, okay, is this related at all? Is this tension that we had at the beginning of why these kids are so violent going to come back in any meaningful way?
I mean, I get how they're supposed to connect even early on, but it just feels so tenuous at best. But I think it's like a presentation problem almost, because the way those scenes of violence are portrayed, they're almost horror movie scenes. The way that it's like, oh, the kids are up to something, they're going to do something violent, they're staring at this one other kid, they're going to do something bad. The way they're presented is so horror movie that it feels almost like a supernatural virus is spreading and causing them to be violent. That's how severe it feels. So any idea that the influence of the teachers is in some way influencing them to act out more it doesn't feel grounded in the way they're doing it, to the point where that feels like the cause. It feels like, no, this feels like Freddy Krueger's in their heads or something, and that's why things are happening. So there's a little bit of a disconnect. And I don't even necessarily agree with the idea that the teacher rivalry is less interesting. I think it's actually way more developed. Like, there's way more character depth to it. There's way more and it's actually when it tries to tie back in the other stuff that I actually feel the movie floundering towards the end, because I'm like, I just don't feel these things coming together all that well. They feel like, I see what you're kind of trying to do by bringing them together, but they just don't work together with me. And by the time we get some like moments at the end that it tries to cap off all this stuff, I'm just kind of going, okay, this looks good because you're filming it really well. I like the shot here, but I don't know if you've really truly set this up where I'm like, oh god, this is the perfect payoff to, like, everything you've seen throughout the movie. It doesn't feel that way at all to me.
Yeah. No, I think that's kind of what I was feeling as well, is this idea that at the beginning it has such a supernatural horror vibe. And I am going to disagree with you a little bit I think that the ending is actually decent. I think that I do like the way that they tie the stuff in, but that's only because over the course of the movie, it very slowly shifts out of this supernatural horror element into the character drama, and more specifically into the mystery, into the who can you trust, what is going on sort of aspect here. And it really tries to lean into that. Once I started feeling that stuff, I was more inclined to give this movie more of my attention, more of my time. And by the time it hit the end, it was there. But I would say it took at least until 45, 50 minutes in for me to feel like I was being given anything to play with there. And that's just too long after the incredibly dark violence openings at the beginning.
Yeah, I guess I don't know what I expected from the back half once they'd set everything up in both kind of plots. Like, I wasn't sure where I thought it was going, but where they actually went with it left me kind of feeling like it felt underwhelming on both sides. I don't know. Like, I don't know what the perfect solution was for me, but it didn't quite land. Ultimately, it just feels like a movie that doesn't quite click with me, even though I think that there's individually good things about it. There's good performances, there's good camera work, all that kind of stuff. I think it is better than Anderson tapes, but it's still flawed, and maybe, again, there's a reason why it's not brought up that much. There's a reason why we joke about Chucky, is because when people say Child's Play, that's what they think about. They do not think about this.
Yeah, I have a feeling that when they were making Child's Play, someone came in and said, guys, there's a Sidney Lumet film named Child's Play. I don't think we can use the title. And everyone just went, well, we've never heard of it, so not a big deal.
So, and actually, one thing I will say as well, there is good performances for the most part. I think both teachers are good. I do think Beau Bridges has a couple of scenes where I didn't love his performance. There's a scene kind of like relatively early on where he's giving kind of an emotional recount of an event, and honestly, he like kind of hams it up a little bit, and it's like he's like doing his show reel. Like, I want to show that I can act and be emotional, and it feels like he's going a bit too far, to the point where it feels like he's doing his, like, this is my monologue, this is my chance to impress the audition panel kind of thing.
Yeah. Honestly, I think I agree with you, but I feel like it's only by comparison. I think if he were on his own here, it would be fine, but the other two lead actors do such a great job of being these like reserved yet still very complex characters. I think it's just, by comparison, he stands out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, I mean, because obviously he's supposed to be younger, he's supposed to be closer in age to the students than he is the other teachers, and that's all fine and well, and it makes sense that he would be acting differently. I just think he goes a bit too, like, I'm going to show my emotions. Like, I don't know, just a bit too much. That's all.
Yeah,
so
yeah, I get you.
Yeah, so there's that.
The only other thing I want to point out in this is I brought up that it was a play before, and I think the reason that the play is so, at least I wouldn't say well renowned, but it did so well, like the Tonys, it was very popular. It was enough to get a movie fast tracked for it. I think a big contributing factor is the idea that when it is a stage play, I guess you could set up this idea of supernatural horror. You can do that stuff, but there's not really a visual language for it on the stage. There isn't a way that, like, you can't set up these shots to make it feel that way. So I think that the supernatural elements may be a bit more toned down in the stage play production, whereas in this, just by the language of film, the way that he's shooting these things, it feels like this is a demonic possession. And of course, setting it in a Catholic school doesn't help that case, but it definitely feels like there's something bigger afoot than just these students and teachers that I don't think would have been present on the stage, at least not nearly to this degree.
Yeah, I was just looking up the actor who plays Dodds, or was it Dobbs?
Mm-hmm.
We saw him in a movie on Ace. Actually, he was the alien in The Last Starfighter.
Okay,
he was like the old man, I think, who comes and like recruits him.
Fair enough. Sure. I think my one critique on Last Starfighter was I don't remember the Starfighter stuff nearly as much as everything else.
That is fair. I remembered his demeanor, and I'm sure I've seen him in something, and I think that's what it is I'm thinking of. Which was one of the last things he did, actually, because he passed away in 1987, so that was one of the last few things he made. But yeah, so and yeah, him. So that's Robert Preston, and then the other teacher, Mally, is played by James Mason. Who does sound familiar. I'm clicking on his name here. Oh, he's in Lolita. I've seen Lolita. He's in North by Northwest. So yeah, he's been in a bunch of classic movies by the looks of it.
Yeah, he's a big one. And James Mason Mally is the hard ass who teaches Latin, whereas the other one is the one that all the students love. He's like a buddy with them, and he teaches, I think, poetry, English in general, I guess.
English, yeah. I don't think they have a specific poetry class.
Yeah, it just opens with him saying like, "Oh, you boys don't know poetry."
Having said that, though, sometimes it surprises me how specific some American classes are, because like I'll hear like in movies and TV shows like students in high school saying, "Oh, I've got algebra this afternoon," and I'm like, "You just have a specific algebra class?" No, we just had maths. We did all that in maths.
No, man, that was let's see here. Middle school for me was algebra, geometry, algebra 2, and then in high school it was trig, calculus, all these different classes. Not a single one of them combined.
No, they were all in just maths.
That's weird. I mean, we didn't have a specific math class. Those were all the math class, but it was like year by year they were different.
Yeah, no, just all done that. I mean, you did math. You did math every day, like on like some subjects, but you only did it, 3 times a week maybe. But like, yeah, so that's just one of those weird things. So yeah, and then you have like a. Well, what do you have? So I'm pretty sure I've heard you have lit class, like English literature class, right?
Yes,
that's the thing. What are the other English classes?
I mean, it depends how specific you want to go. There's like creative writing classes, there's classicals, there's modern literature, stuff like that. But that's usually more so when you hit the college stuff rather than high school or anything like that.
Nah, it's just funny how it's split up. It's weird. Anyway, but no poetry class though. I think that's too specific.
Yes.
Unless you get to like college and you're specifically studying poetry, at which point there maybe you specialize. But yeah. So
not here.
No. They should break it down further. They should have this is subtraction class, this is addition class, this is multiplication class.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, if you break it down year by year, like they pretty much just introduce 1 or 2 subjects, 1 or 2 new concepts per year. So like you could say that the kindergarten math class is addition class because that's where it starts.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure addition and subtraction get taught at the same time, but
yeah. Maybe.
I could be wrong. Division was definitely the last of the 4, though. I remember that being like primary 4 before they started teaching us division.
Oh, yeah, that's where the teacher like cracks their knuckles and says, "All right, you bastards, you don't know what you're in for."
Anyway, so where were we? Yes, I guess we're getting ready for spoilers so we can dive into the movie a bit more. I will mention the music a little bit because there's not a ton of it, but when it does come in, they'll have like what sounds like a religious schoolboy choir or something in a couple of key scenes in the background. And sometimes that's when it's maybe getting a little bit over the top for me in terms of its tone. I think there's times when this does dip a little bit into not quite in the same way, but back when we did The Fugitive kind, and I was talking about Marlon Brando would get his monologues. But even though I think like Preston, who's a better actor than Beau Bridges, like he does get a monologue at one point. And I think it's not so much. I think the dialogue does get to a point where he's been a little bit too. I don't know. Like he's he's being too vague and poetic for what he's trying to say, but it's also heightened by the fact that we have this school choir sort of music in the background, which is making it feel kind of biblical. And I'm like, okay, you're maybe like laying it on a bit thick here for me, where I don't think you've earned this moment.
It's like 20 minutes into the movie, we go into the chapel, and it's the two teachers talking, and Dobbs just literally walks in and just goes like, you know, I was told when I was a schoolboy that candle means there's God up there. And I always thought if a wind blows in, is God gone? And it's like, yeah, all right, that's how I start every conversation with my colleagues. What are you doing, man?
Yeah, so I just want to mention that. But I think, we'll get into spoilers so we can talk about the movie a bit more. But Neil say we're a bit mixed on it. Leaning positive because there's a lot of talent here, but mixed overall because of the story and things not quite panning out and working for us.
I mean, I wish I could make a comparison point without like getting too deep into spoilers, but like this isn't anything like what we've done for the rest of the season. It is kind of uniquely its own thing, so it's hard to make that kind of jump of if you like this, then you would like this as well.
Yeah, it's which I mean, is in a way kind of a positive thing that Lumet is doing different types of stories. He's trying different things. It feels like he's experimenting with different types of. Although that said, though, there is definitely a theme here of authority figures and their influence, and that's definitely, it's not the exact same thing as The Hill, but there's definitely a little bit of, like, you can see like a bit of a connection between some of those themes.
Yeah, this one I think is more so focused on paranoia and, again, that mystery idea and like who to believe and what's going on there.
I just mean, though, there's a lot of talk of we're going to shape these boys into men, or we're going to shape these men into fine soldiers that we're proud of. Like, there's definitely some of that overlap between them, but
for sure.
But anyway, yes, we'll say spoilers then for Child's Play 1972. You've been warned. We're going to get into the movie. So I guess I don't even know where to start with this, because I don't necessarily want to go through an order with this one either, because it feels like
yeah, that's fair. I guess we can still start with the initial opening, which is a bunch of boys are asleep in like a dorm room or whatever, and then one of them all of a sudden gets pinned down by a bunch of other boys who jump him. They prick his finger to get his blood and then do a sign of the cross on his forehead. And that's like immediately a crazy ass opening that leads you to believe, dear God, this is borderline demonic, because this is not something normal kids do.
Yeah, it's definitely extreme, although I wasn't necessarily getting horror movie vibes with this one. It was more like, there's another couple of ones where they're a bit more like, particularly in the gym when they all just turn and stare at the one kid, and then that one kid's like, it's clear that he just let them do it and he wants them to do it, and I'm like, okay, this is like some sort of supernatural mind worm or something that's going on. Like, what's happening here? But yeah, we see them acting out. We see that they've been having more incidents of violence. There's one where they sneak in and hang up one of the teenagers on the cross in the chapel, which that's the big shocking one that really freaks everyone out. Well, that, and of course
it's also pretty much the last one.
Yeah, and the gym attack as well, when they all beat up the kid, he ultimately is going to lose an eye because of the violence that's happened. That's what we find out about it. So,
also, there's one, just as Beau Bridges is arriving, he finds out some kids fighting and they like break one of the kids' arms.
Yeah. So he dives in and tries to get him to stop. And it's clear that in some ways these kids aren't necessarily just getting scared and running away because they've been caught. Like, he even has to fight through them a little bit, and he kind of comments on that as well. That's when he gets really emotional, actually, when he's telling all the other, because he leaves the gym for like a minute to go get his stopwatch because he left it in the faculty room, and he comes back, and that's when the attack's happening. And when they come back from the hospital, and he's got blood on his shirt, and he's they're like, what happened? And he tells the story. He's like, they wouldn't let me through, so I had to hit one of them, and I hit another one, and he's basically crying as he's saying this, and it's like he's doing this big emotional monologue, and this is like, I'm like, okay, I don't know if this performance in this scene is working for me, because I'm kind of been taken out of it, but I get it.
Yeah, I felt the same, and then I was like, okay, we didn't get confirmation on what specifically was going to happen to the kid yet, but from the visual, it looks like he lost an eye. It looks like his eye was literally plucked out of his head.
Because it's when they walk in the start of this scene, it's before Beau Bridges' speech where
is it?
Yeah,
Okay.
Dobbs says, he's going to be fine, but he's going to lose an eye. He says that right because one of the priests turns around and goes, "Lose an eye." It's clear that it's clear that this violent stuff is escalating. Right. It's like this is the worst it's been so far.
Yeah, they immediately do a hospital scene right after this, and I thought that was in the hospital scene, but fair enough. But no, I think once you establish that a kid's lost an eye, it's okay for him to be emotional on the set that like he was just around this horrible thing that just happened and he wasn't able to stop it. But I agree that he may ham it up just a wee bit much, just a tiny bit over the line where it's like, all right, you're getting a bit campy now.
20%.
Yeah.
Maybe 30.
But no, so that's like everything we just said there is all of the kids doing violent things. Like that's it. And that is all pretty much wrapped up by, I'd say the 45-minute mark.
Yeah, aside from the ending, obviously, when it comes back in. But like, you know, that's like everything there. Because what the movie really focuses on is we're introduced to Dobbs, who's very friendly with his students, and he's teaching them poetry, and he's doing whatever. And we see him talking to one student in particular who's asking for help because he's going to get into trouble because he did a prank call to Mally, right? We've not even met Mally yet at this point. And he's like, look, no promises, but I'll try and talk to him on your behalf and get him to lighten up maybe. And, you know, he seems sorry, blah, blah, blah. And it's okay. He's good with the kids. He's trying to look out for them. And when we do get to introduced to Mally, we see that he's a lot more stern. He's very curmudgeon-y. He's barking at people. He's not exactly pleasant to the staff either, never mind the kids. But when he's with the kids, he's like, no, you stand up and speak now. Oh, that Latin was terrible. Sit down. Now you get stand up and speak. He's very strict, very harsh. Yeah. You get the vibe immediately as soon as you see him. And when Dobbs does try to speak to him as a colleague, because at this point we don't really know that there's like a beef between them, and even seemingly from Dobbs' side at this point in the movie there is no beef. It's really just from Mally's side. Obviously things evolve a bit by the end of the film, but he's like, oh, you're speaking on behalf of that troubled boy? No, I will speak to the headmaster about him and he will be punished to as much as he can. He's like, he's just a kid letting off some steam. No harm was done. He's pretty sorry. You know, be nice to him. And he's like, no, I will not. He will be punished accordingly. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. At the beginning, when Beau Bridges first shows up, that's the only time you get to see this little dichotomy between them where it seems like Dobbs is trying to be friendly, but Mally is very much like standoff, very much like, don't bother me. I'm not in the mood, whatever like that. And we also get the bit where Beau Bridges basically says like, yeah, this is the way it's always been. 10 years ago when I was a student, he was still a hard ass and you were still the likable one. Like, it's always been this way. But now he's able to see from this different lens, from the teacher's perspective, and how that changes his view over the course of the movie.
Yeah, because up front, it's like, hey, I'm happy to see you again, my favourite teacher, Dobbs, and they're hugging, and he's taking him around, he's reminiscing about his childhood here, and how exciting it is that he's back as a teacher and all the rest of it. And it is like, I think it is a smart piece of writing on the story's, side of things, that you have someone who was a student here and is now back with adult eyes to reassess things and see things with maturity. I do think that's a smart writing ploy. So I no complaints with that idea.
Oh yeah.
So
no, it adds a great background to it because you're able to make these callbacks to say, like I said, these things have always been this way. And so it's not that thing where he comes in and he notices things are different. It's getting further development on things that have always been.
So to get into the meat of what's going on here then is that Mally is a bit of a prick, right, with the way he talks to everyone. But he claims that he keeps getting phone calls. We see that he's scared to answer his phone, and he's also pissed off that his phone is often answered by his very, very old, sick mother, because he's already pretty old himself, so his mother must be ancient. We never see her, but she's clearly very, very old. And
well, she's on the verge of dying as well.
Of course, yeah. I mean, I did say she was sick, right? That was the implication, right?
Yeah, but not like sick in the way of like, oh, she just needs a nurse to tend to her. Everyone's like, no, she's got like weeks. She ain't doing hot. She's not going to make it through this movie.
Yeah. So, like, he's pissed off about these phone calls, and he's saying that they keep happening. They've been happening for a long time. And he also claims that Dobbs is behind it. And at first, it just kind of sounds like he's insinuating that Dobbs is, like, goading his students on, that his influence is leading them to be like this. But then as the movie progresses, it's clear that he thinks that Dobbs is actually some kind of mastermind. And not only is he making calls that are obscene, he's even sending him pornographic magazines and images and things to torment him, believing that Dobbs is doing everything he can to make him want to leave. Now, it is set up early on that Malley can choose to retire now. He's old enough to make that choice, but he doesn't want to. And when he does retire, Dobbs will get his senior class, because Dobbs teaches the juniors and Malley teaches the seniors. So they do set up that there would be a potential motivation, but everything we see from Dobbs in the first half of the movie is very much, he seems thoughtful, he seems like he's trying to be a friend to this guy, and Malley comes off as a paranoid fool. Now, admittedly, my meta brain, because I'm watching a movie, is going, it feels like they're going to pull a twist on us at some point and say that Dobbs is actually doing something malicious, but they're not presenting anything to actually hint at that yet, really. I'm just reading it in a meta way because I'm watching movies.
Yeah. No, I had the same thing, but I was going a little bit more toned down, where once we're done with all the students being violence thing, once I locked in that this was going to be the plot of the story, we're following these teachers and their feud, I realized that Beau Bridges is going to be the audience avatar, and the idea of it is that we're going to humanize the hard ass who seemingly has always just been this gruff old man. We're going to soften him up. We're going to make him more of a likable character, and then we're going to question the intentions and the motives of the likable one. Maybe not villainize, but at the very least make it so that he's not as light and fluffy as he seems on the outside.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely early on was like, okay, if nothing else, Malley's going to be more sympathetic by the end. And I think I almost like the idea that it's not that Dobbs turns out to be a villain and he is bad or doing stuff. It's more just a sad story about this guy learning, why he's paranoid and growing and maybe becoming a better person by the end or something. But obviously once it started going down the path that was going down, I'm like, okay, it makes sense that we're going to be questioning Dobbs' motivations. Is he up to something? Is it like as pointed as Malley thinks it is, where he's actually masterminding something? Or is he just kind of encouraging the students in certain ways? The problem I had with the whole connection to the students being violent, though, is that there's even a point in the middle of this movie, once more stuff has happened, they're having faculty meetings, where Beau Bridges, I always said, Jeff Bridges.
You said Paul somewhere there.
Yeah. Well, his name's Paul. He's Paul Reese, but I almost said Paul Bridges instead of Reese. Yeah. But anyway, so Reese, he actually cuts his own hand at one point, and that's something we saw the kids kind of doing to themselves. And I was almost like, wait, are we going to go down some sort of weird they all get brainwashed and it's coming back out now because he's back around these characters? And
right,
and he even questions it afterwards. He's like, I cut myself and I did it intentionally. I don't know why I did that. And I'm like, where are we going with this? And I feel like the movie doesn't really go anywhere with it, and I'm not really sure how to read that scene now that the movie's over.
Yeah, honestly, I kind of forgot about that scene because of how completely nothing it was. It's this bit where they're trying to build up the paranoia and suspicion, not from Malley's side, but from Beau Bridges' side, seeing Malley's side of things and starting to understand him as a person, where he thinks he hears some kids in the school despite it being after hours. And this is after a kid has essentially been crucified, he was strung up on the cross. So all the kids should be locked down. But then he comes across a Jesus photo with its eyes cut out. And he's like, there's some weird stuff going on here, and I'm not sure what it is. And it feels like it's just trying to build up this, again, supernatural paranoia. This thing where it's why can't it, wait, there's something more going on. If the kids aren't around, then something is. But then immediately Dobbs walks in and he's just like, hey, cut your hand. Let me fix that up for you. And it's just dropped. We don't do anything more with that.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what to read with that. And again, it was making me think, oh, what's going on with the kids? Is this a hint as to what they're all going through? And then not really. It's very strange. So, yeah, I mean, it builds though, and it builds with because a lot of these little accusations and comments from Malley about what he thinks Dobbs is up to. There's no point in trying to specify and pinpoint most of them, because it's just lots of little things throughout a lot of scenes, right? He's constantly bringing things up. He's constantly saying it. And when his mother dies, right? His mother does die. And first she's getting carried off to the hospital, but it's clear that time's almost up. But she's clearly getting into hospital for her final days, whatever it is. And Mally becomes obsessed because something has went missing from his briefcase, and he starts frantically panicking and searching for it. And I'm like, what's he looking for? Like, I didn't quite get what he was looking for. And he goes back to the staff lounge, the faculty lounge, and he's looking around. And this is pretty prominent in this scene for two reasons. One, because obviously he's looking for this thing that he's convinced that Dobbs has taken. It turns out later to be a porn magazine that was sent to him that he didn't order. You know, that's kind of the key point here. That, you know, so he's worried that it's been taken, and he doesn't want it to be like seen by someone because he doesn't want anyone to think that he's into that kind of thing, or that he's, you know, bringing that material to school. But the other reason why this scene's important is because this is the scene where Paul, Beau Bridges' character, is alone with them, and he's sympathetic towards him. He helps him up when he falls down. He gives him a coffee. He tries to understand why he's looking for something, and he generally wants to help him. And I thought, oh, maybe we're going to do the thing here where this former student's going to show some kindness, and maybe it'll soften up Mally a little bit. But and it does do that a little bit, but what it actually does more so is that it lets Paul see just how messed up Mally is by this torment that he's going through, so that he can sympathize with him a little bit, so that later when he sees some other things, he starts to question what's happening to Mally a little bit differently than anyone else will.
Yeah, there's a very smart moment where they sit down and he's calming down after freaking out. He at one point stumbles over and gets a big bruise on his head, which is there until the end. Really adding to like a disheveled look as we continue on with this movie as well. But they sit down and Mally starts talking to Reese, and it's just like, oh yeah, which class were you from? And they start talking about the old days or whatever. And he mentions, oh yeah, I still a couple of kids every once in a while keep in contact, because like once they grow up, once they get out of the school, they sometimes realize like me being a hard ass is not the worst thing for them. Like me being a hard ass is something that some kids benefit from, and they are appreciative of in the long run. So he pulls out this briefcase, and that's full of like Christmas cards and stuff that he saves over time, which also gives the insight for Beau Bridges' character of like, yeah, this guy, he saves cards from all of his past students. He's not just this unfeeling monster. He
doesn't hate them. And it even asks like Beau Bridges, like, hey, like some of those other kids in your class, do you know what they're up to now? And he's like, yeah, I know what a few of them are doing. Like he's over there and this guy's over there. And he's like, oh, and it seems like he's happy to hear they're doing well. I mean, he's not like you know, grinning about it, but he seems like he's happy to hear about it. So, you know, it humanizes him a little bit. And then at the end of the scene, there's a phone call, which he doesn't want to answer. Paul answers it for him. And then he's like, it's the hospital. And he finds out that his mother's died. And then immediately Mally says, I've been searching for this because Dobbs made me search for it, meaning that Dobbs is responsible for me not being by my mother's side when she died. Like, and it's the funny thing is that it does feel really paranoid. It feels like, no, you're jumping to a, like, maybe, I mean, yeah, maybe he's right, but it feels like he's jumping to a really extreme conclusion where this is Dobbs' fault. I missed my mother's death because of him, you know?
Well, it doubles down, because the whole reason that he's not willing to pick up the phone is because of all those prank calls that he's been getting. He assumes, like, he's essentially traumatized now by the sound of it, and he doesn't want to pick it up because of that.
So yeah, I mean, this leads on to the next bit, and you know, Paul, Beau Bridges' character, goes to the mother's funeral, and there's not a lot of people there, so it's like, yeah, it's kind of nice he went there to show some support for Mally. And Mally's expected to be gone for at least a week, although of course he ends up showing up after a couple of days, much to everyone's surprise, and like, you shouldn't really be here. You're in mourning. You should be, away.
There is a bit that we skipped over. So after the kid getting tied up on the cross thing, throughout the movie we've been introduced to I'm going to call the administration. They're priests. They're the ones who are actually like in charge of the Catholic school,
and one specifically the headmaster as well. Like, it's clear which one that is.
Because of all the violence and all that, they've basically come to the conclusion of like, look, if anything else happens, we're gonna have to shut down the school for the rest of the term. And everyone is in agreement that like, if that happens, the school's essentially done for. They're not going to be able to stay open, which Dobbs is really pushing. Like, we got to fight. We got to do whatever we can to stay open, no matter what it takes.
Yeah, we have to find the reason for it. It means we've not looked hard enough. And that's kind of the first hint in the whole movie, I feels like, where, oh, maybe he does want to like effectively crucify Mally and make him the scapegoat for everything, even if he isn't the reason for it. So it sets these things up, and you know, when Mally does come back, and there was a scene in the middle where he talks to the headmaster, and the headmaster kind of suggests lighten up on the boys. I'm asking you to do it, and Mally stands his ground and says, "No, I will not lighten up. That's not who I am." Blah 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 blah.
Also, have I mentioned how evil Dobbs is? That's really important, you know.
Yes, Dobbs is a monster. He keeps doing things to me, and no one believes him, obviously. But the second time he meets with the headmaster after this comeback is where, like, we find out that there's a magazine in an envelope with his address on it, with Mally's address on it. It's been handed to the headmaster. With this,
well, Mally's name, but it's addressed to the school itself, which is the problem.
Yes. And it's been opened, and like, because basically it definitely sounds like at the start of this scene that the headmaster's building up to, like, I'm going to ask you to retire, and basically says that this is problematic, and he whips out the envelope with the magazine in it and says, look, if you just retire right now, this like full pension you were promised when you retire, I'll make sure that stays. No one will ever know there was some trouble. You just go quietly now and you get everything you're supposed to get, and that's fine. The implication being, though, that if you fight this, we're going to have to report this, and you're going to be looked at as some sort of troublemaker and deviant and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And of course he tries to stand up and say, no, Dobbs did this to me. Dobbs did this. And the smoking gun, which really pivots Reese as a character, is that after this meeting happens, and Reese sees and finds out what's going on, right, and says, oh, you're being fired, you're being told to leave, all this and this. And not to gloss over the fact that Mally, like, literally gets down on his knees and begs the headmaster and tries to confess his sins to convince him not to go and not force him to leave and all that. But Reese goes to the headmaster to try and just sort of talk on his behalf and tell him that, hey, you know, like, if he's been given anything, like, he you know, he's been sent to him against his will, he's been harassed. But the headmaster just happens to let slip that Dobbs is indeed the one that gave him this evidence, that he's the one that handed it to him. And you can see the moment on Beau Bridges' face where he's like, Mally might not be crazy. There might actually be something to this, that he's the one behind this. To what extent is still a little bit open, but it's like, this is definitely the moment where he really doubts him and goes, oh no, like, maybe my childhood hero, the guy that I looked up to is the nice one, might be the bad guy.
Yeah, so this is kind of part of the structural issues that I have problems with in this bit, where it takes too long to get into it, is that from the point where we stop the children attacking each other or whatever, that's, 30, 45 minutes in, somewhere around there, to this point here is about half an hour, 45 minutes of just Mally saying, it's Dobbs, it's Dobbs, it's Dobbs, Reese slowly learning more about him, which I do like. I like the character development there. But then between him coming to this realization and saying, wait a minute, there might be more to this, the Dobbs might actually be suspicious, to then confronting Dobbs is one scene. He walks in and says, Dobbs, did you do it? And Dobbs goes, you're goddamn right I did. You can't handle the truth.
Well, no, that's the thing, though, is he admits that he handed the envelope in, but he's like, I did it for the school, I did it for the boys, I did it for all the right reasons. Like, that, there's nothing bad about this. Like, I did this because I care about everyone. I've taught 1,000 boys over my 10 years, and boys of other men, but they're my boys, blah blah blah. And he makes a whole speech and whatnot at one point.
Right.
That's actually a different scene. That's the scene where the choir's in the background and he's on the stairs and it's all moody and whatnot. But all of this is like building to this idea, and when we get this confrontation, where once we have, like, because he does this confrontation with Dobbs in front of Mally, because Reese doesn't want to do it that way. Reese wants to talk to Dobbs alone and say, hey, can I talk to you? And he's like, no, anything you can say to me, you can say in front of Mally here. So Mally sits there quietly throughout this entire scene. And it's actually really notable because he's never been a quiet guy. He's always, like, made sure his opinion's heard. He's always stuck up for himself and sounded like a bit of a dick sometimes when he's doing it, but he's always, like, there to, like, give his opinion. But he's kind of so defeated that this purpose that he has in life has been taken away from him, that he can't, like, continue his profession. Obviously his mother's died as well, so he's in a really rough place, but he sits there and lets this scene play out, and it really does feel like Dobbs has won. And he talks about that and talks about how this is good for everyone and so on. And there's, like, one exchange that he gives to Dobbs before the end, but the ending of this is tragic, where Mally runs up to the roof and he jumps off. And we get kind of this ominous scene where all the boys who are in class all like run up to the windows and are looking down at his dead body, as like one of the priests comes out and does some sort of last rites kind of prayer over him and whatnot. But it's all this. But I think notably as well when Reese runs out to get him and like, you know, see if he's okay, which he obviously knows he isn't, but like he obviously would run out to his body. He's looking around and Dobbs isn't looking out. Dobbs isn't even, you know, and I almost thought he would. I almost thought we'd get like a sinister shot of Dobbs smiling at the window or something. That would be really cheesy, obviously. But I almost was worried that we're going to do something like that, where he's like, twirling my mustache. All my plans have come to fruition.
Even if they didn't do that, like obviously we just left Dobbs in the office. I just expected them to like cut over, show that he's not anywhere near the window, but he's just like leaning back in his chair, lighting up a cigar or something, like something cartoonishly evil.
Yeah, and I think him being this like kind of villainous, like or as villainous as he feels like by the very end, is kind of like what I'm less interested in. I think the best part of this movie for me is the character development of Mally and the character development of Reese as he realizes that Mally is not such a bad guy. For me, that's like the best thing about the movie, is that relationship.
Yeah. No, yeah, I really like the turn that Mally has here, because it's something that obviously is true for anybody. Like as a child, as a young adult, whatever you want to call it, you look at these teachers and you see them as just teachers. Like they aren't people, they are teachers. They don't have lives outside of this place. And then coming in and being able to see it from this outside perspective, being able to see all of the things going on behind the scenes, the sick mother, the fact that he's being harassed. There's one bit when he's talking to the head administrator, the head father, he gets handed a note that was being passed between kids that we don't get to see, but it implies that it's not kind to Mally. It is very much something up against him. And he has to go through all this essentially alone. And that's something that I really like that perspective of. I really like the way that they recharacterize this character, because introducing him, you go into that childish mindset. You see him as the hard ass that, you know, you shouldn't like from an audience perspective, the guy who's constantly yelling at kids for no reason. But then you see, no, there's a reason, and it's pretty damn expected that he would be at this point by now. Yeah,
actually, there was an interesting direction I thought they might go in. When you brought up like the scene with the note, but also the porn magazine being like, you know, hey, you've brought this into the school. There's a line from Mally where he says, "Anything good on in my life I have never brought to school," which almost made me think that he does actually engage in some, you know, whatever it is. Maybe it's porn, maybe it's, you know, sex, whatever. But I almost thought they were going to like maybe make an interesting pivot here where, no, he does actually like have porn at his house, and it does have, maybe an addiction's a strong word, but he is into that kind of thing. And maybe the evil thing that Dobbs has done is he's found a way to bring it into the school life. And I thought it might have actually been kind of interesting and nuanced to do the whole thing where, well, yeah, he has material, but there's nothing wrong with him having material. But, you know, all these priests obviously are going to be like, oh, this is filth. You've got filth. You're a monster. Blah, blah, blah.
I didn't read the line that way. I read it much more as kind of exactly what I was just saying there of Dobbs, by contrast, is very open with the kids. He's very much sharing things about himself and very much whatever. Whereas Mally views it as a virtue. It views him as a positive of he keeps his personal life, him as a person, and his school life completely separate. When he says he didn't bring anything into school, he means he didn't bring anything into this school. Yeah.
And yeah, to be fair, like as far as actual teaching goes, I do think that, like, the sad part is I do think Dobbs' like friendliness with the students is good to a point. Like, you know, at least the initial versions of it we see. Once he starts talking about loving his boys and, like, you know, saying that they've got friendships with all of them, I'm like, okay, you're actually getting a little too like attached here in a weird way.
Who here needs a fake ID? I can help. That's the kind of teacher I am.
But I do think, you know, actually, like, trying to make it clear to your students that you are a human being, and that, you know, make it clear when you're maybe injecting a little bit of personality or opinions, not a bad thing. Like, showing some enthusiasm for what you're teaching is good. Like, I think one of the biggest sins that any teacher I ever had never committed, especially like an English teacher, is like, when you're teaching work, even if I hate it, and I often did because it was often Shakespeare and I hated Shakespeare. But if you like make it clear that you actually love what you're teaching, if you say you love Hamlet when you're teaching Hamlet and act passionate about it, at the very least, I will get a sense of like wonder and like, I'm someone who devotes my goddamn life to talking about movies because I love movies, and I never once in English ever got the feeling that they liked what they were teaching. It was always just very matter of fact. I'm like, just show a little bit of passion for the love of anything.
I English was never my subject. It was more so from the level of, yes, I didn't feel the teachers had like a huge passion for it, but at the same time, I hated the fact that I was like, okay, we have to read the Scarlet Letter. I don't care about the Scarlet Letter. I want to read something I want to read. The Scarlet Letter is stupid and old, and you're just picking it because the themes are literally written on the sleeve, but whatever. It was only once I got to college that I had professors who like actually really gave a damn about the subjects that they were talking about, especially in like the English stuff. And I still remember one professor who like was going through a Shakespeare era. I may not have been exactly Shakespeare, but he was like, oh yes, and now this is what it would sound like in the Old English. And he just started rattling off Old English. And I'm like, okay, this is a guy who knows his stuff and he's definitely into it. And it made me more interested by connection to that.
Yeah, I think just a little bit of passion goes a long way. Like, because even if I don't end up loving the same thing as the teacher loves, I can at least appreciate the enthusiasm for it and then channel that enthusiasm into what I care about. Like, there's something there with that, and it just, so like, yeah. But anyway, like, yeah. So there's something to be said for a middle ground between the two, the two extremes here. Yeah. But the funny thing is, though, is that I feel like this idea of like how they are at school is like, it's less about. Like, the movie's not really about which teaching style is better or about how connected they should be to the students, like either one's too much, one's too little, or anything like that. Because once it kind of comes out what Dobbs is like, and like, Dobbs is still trying to be friendly to Reese at the end, saying, "Oh, I'm going to transfer to this new school. I've got a cushy job. It's opened up. There might be a position for you, Reese. Do you want me to put in a word for you?" And of course, Reese at this point wants to confront him and challenge him on the way he's been with him and the students and all the rest of it.
He's gone through one of their offices. I don't think it's totally clear who, but he went through one of their offices and found the grade book. And he finally put together the whole plan of like why these kids were targeted for attacks and all this other stuff.
Yeah, I think it's Mally's desk. It makes sense that it would be his, but basically all the kids who do well in his class were the ones who were the victims. And I was still a little bit unclear exactly like how directed this was. Like is he actually giving orders to the kids, kind of thing? Right. Like how much of like a mastermind is he here?
It strikes you as that sort of like modern day it'd be called stochastic terrorism. The idea where it's like, I'm just going to make general things and say that anybody who does well in Mally's class should be hurt, but I would never say that anybody would actually go out and do that. No.
But then he knows that they're like all of his class are going to be sitting in their class at like 10 p.m. like creepy horror movie villains. He expects that, and they're all sitting there, and it is a creepy scene because they're all just sitting there looking when they're walking down the stairs. And I'm like, that's just honestly, this is so a weird thing to say, right? I think this movie would be so much better if all the student creepy stuff just wasn't in it. Right, you can like give me the general idea that the students are acting a little bit rowdy or whatever, but this idea that there's this targeted violence and it's all been targeted against the people in like this one guy's class, and there's like an evil mastermind element. I think it would be so much more interesting and nuanced and better developed if Dobbs was kind of manipulating the students a little bit and had some sort of goals and just sort of do the general idea that he's appearing to be the nice one. He is the wolf in the sheep's clothing, if you will. And that's the kind of what we're doing here. And it's led to this abuse that's led to this man's death. But I think that can just be, his influence has led to the prank calls. His influence has led to these notes where they're feeling empowered to like act up against this teacher they don't like because this other guy is kind of doing these little subtle jabs at him or whatever it is. But all of the actual attacks and like, he's a mastermind behind it all just makes it all feel so much cheesier to me and just more of a silly plot than an actual like real story.
I get what you're saying. I think I'm still okay with him being quote unquote the mastermind. Like, I don't want him giving direct orders, but I do want him just kind of guiding them and pushing that way. I think what needed to change for me is that the best attack scene in the movie, in my opinion, is the scene where they are beating up the guy and they break his arm in the locker room.
Mm-hmm.
And that is specifically because when Beau Bridges busts in and breaks it up, they all scatter. They all run out of the room as fast as possible. And it feels very real for like bullying and boys and stuff like that, where no one wants to get in trouble. Nobody wants to stick around to like have to talk to the professor. It's every other time whenever they're talking to a student and they go dead-eyed and just go, well, I don't know anything about that, Mr. Bridges. That makes it feel too weird and too much like a supernatural. If they just treat it like they're kids and treat it like nobody's going to snitch on anybody else, but they don't have to act like demonically possessed children, that's the middle ground.
Or even not to possess. Like, I could even compare it to something like The Wicker Man, where you're all secretly part of a cult. You know, like something like that. That's how the performances feel when they start doing that, and it feels weird and too over the top. So the ending is that he takes Paul down to the class where the kids are all there, and he basically gives a speech about how the boys trust him and he trusts the boys and trust is important and blah 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 blah, and it's all just very kind of like it just goes into almost surreal territory for me, where I can't take it that seriously anymore.
They're literally chanting the conjugations of the Latin word for trust. Like that's, and it feels surreal. It feels over the top. It feels like honestly, this is the sort of thing where like in a comedy, I'd imagine there'd be that like pause afterwards. They'd be like, do you guys do rehearsals? Like, how did you know to say all that on time? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah. And then, Beau Bridges starts yelling out, no, you can't trust him, and your brand of kindness, you're an evil, you're the evil here, and he starts really making it known. And the kids like throw a book at him, and then they all start going towards him as if they're going to kill him, as Dobbs just leaves the scene. So it's implied that they hurt or maybe even kill Reese. Reese. And then the movie ends with Dobbs going to the chapel and sitting down. But then he realizes after a moment that all of his students are now in the chapel with them, and they all surround him. And it's a really nice shot at the end where you see half of his face because one of the students is like standing in front of him, and then like another student steps in covering his face, and that's when we sort of we cut to the candle going out, I think, that we mentioned earlier, and then it goes to the credits, and I'm like, so is the end of this movie that the students have killed both Reese and Dobbs? And if so, like, what's the metaphor here for, like, is it this idea that he's created the next generation and the young generation will always come up and like end the previous one or something? I don't know, like
maybe it's a kind of metaphor for like fascism or something, where it's like, yes, you've led this cult of personality, but then all cults of personalities, they eventually lose control. Like it's something where they're always gonna like rise up and turn against you if you go against the grain for whatever reason.
And that's fine as like an allegory or like a metaphor, but like this is a problem that I've had with some occasional horror movies, right? Where some horror movies, and I talked to this, with Tim on Screams about this, Screams After Midnight, the horror movie podcast that we do, if anyone wants to go listen to it. But there's some horror movies where obviously there's like, the horror as a metaphor, it's an analogy, it's standing to represent something, or it's tapping into a fear that people have, and that's good. It's great when it has that, it gives the movie depth. But there's some horror movies where I feel like the supernatural thing is just a metaphor, and it doesn't work in the context of the story on its own. A big example recently was The Woman in the Yard, where the whole thing represents this, the main character's trauma and like her guilt about something, and it's like that personified, but it's never just like a something on its own. By the end of the movie, that's all it ever was, and I'm like, but the other people saw the thing too, so it's not just like something in her head. Like there was a supernatural force coming for them, and it just feels like, so it never lines up. And I feel kind of the same way here, where this ending feels like a sort of great like poignant metaphor moment, but I don't really think it fits into the real world story that was being told up until that point.
Right. All right, so just to interject, let me tell you the original ending for the play, because it was changed. The play to the film, it did change slightly. So the original ending for the play, everything happens up until the suicide and the confrontation scene. When Reese goes to confront, Dobbs says, yes, I did it, I planned this whole thing or whatever. However, I didn't expect it to go so far that Mally would kill himself. I expected him to quit. This was farther than I ever could have expected it to go, and I feel remorse over that fact. And he says that he's going to go and confess to the boys that he didn't expect it to go this far and all that sort of stuff. And apparently, and I'm just going to read this last sentence here. When Reese leaves, Dobbs frantically pleads for mercy from the boys as they surround him. The lights go dark for the last time in the show as the first punch is thrown at Dobbs. So Reese makes it out fine. Dobbs throws himself at the mercy of the boys, and they still end up theoretically killing him.
I guess I like a little bit that, like, them wanting to kill Reese doesn't make much sense to me, so I guess that's technically an improvement. I still don't know if I like that ending either, though.
Right.
Because
I get what you're saying. It feels like this is one of those endings that should have a lot more ambiguity, and they just put a bit too much on it. Again,
the boys feel like a creepy group of characters from a horror movie at this point, and it just doesn't fit with me for like the serious like themes and characters that this movie's had otherwise. And there's still just a disconnect for me of, like, you know, if he wasn't actually giving them direct orders, it just kind of feels like so organized and they're all in on it. And even the people who are being beat up are volunteering because they want to ruin the reputation of this teacher. Even though at no point in this movie, I'm pretty sure a single one of the faculty that isn't Dobbs ever says, you know, that it's all Mally's class that are having these attacks.
Yeah.
Like, there's a problem with him. No one ever connects it to him other than Dobbs, and he never even really does it in front of the other staff. He does it maybe in front of, like, Reese, but no one else. I don't know. It feels like there's just some weird disconnect between some of the elements in this, like, plot, especially once it's revealed what's kind of going on. I still feel like there's weird questions and gaps that don't quite link up for me. So the whole thing feels a little unsatisfying.
No, I get that. I will point out that they specifically do mention how the classes are arranged by years, how, like, one of them teaches juniors and then seniors and stuff. So I don't think it's a thing where it's everyone in Mally's class, because it's going to be shared amongst numerous teachers. I think they, like, move as a block, more or less. But yeah, beyond that, I agree. I think that it's something where the fact that they put it in a bit of a supernatural light at the beginning and kept coming back to that, especially during that bit where Beau Bridges cuts his hand or whatever, by the time we hit the end, it feels less satisfying to get an answer because of how much they were building up the other stuff before. It's kind of the opposite of, like, a Scooby-Doo mystery, where there is the exact same sort of thing, supernatural stuff that gets a answer as to, oh, this was just a real thing the whole time. It didn't have anything to do with supernatural, because it still feels like there's so much left unanswered. There's so much still on the table of, why are the boys the way they are? What was the plan to begin with? What were we doing throughout all this? It's a mystery that doesn't have an answer by the time you really hit the end, at least not to the questions that really matter.
Everything we see them do just feels too organized for how vague it seems to be at the end. I don't know. It didn't click, and it's left me kind of underwhelmed. And, like, I think, you know, because, like I said, halfway through the movie, when it was getting into the character development of Mally and Reese and, like, the sort of growth that was happening there, I was kind of enjoying the character stuff, even though I still thought it was maybe one of the weaker movies of the season outside of Anderson Tapes. But once we got to the ending, I think my opinion dipped. Like, my overall feeling of the movie dipped significantly with the ending, I think.
Okay. For me, it was set, I wouldn't even say high at the beginning, but it went down real low once we got into the middle part of it. It started building up as we got the Mally changes, and I think it got a little bit higher as we hit the ending. It wasn't dipping, I don't think, for me. But that first low dip, it made me practically at zero on this movie. I was so bored by so much of the middle bit. And it was only once it started trying to build back up again that it got to anything even kind of worthwhile in my eyes.
No, the ending's the worst part for me. I really did not like the ending at all. So
I like the ending stylistically. That's the thing.
It's shot well.
Stylistically, it does it so well.
Yeah, it's
that
shot
I feel
well.
like I can ignore the plot.
Yeah, but I can't. No, I can't ignore that. It's not the type of movie where I can ignore plot. This isn't some dumb slasher movie. It's meant to be more than that, much more than that.
Yeah.
So it is what it is. All right, David, what are you giving Child's Play out of 10?
I think I was bouncing in my mind between a 7 and a 6.5, which is basically saying, do I think it cracks up to actually being called good? I'm going to say no. I think I'm at the 6.5 on this one. It's close. It's very close. But by the time it's done, I don't think that I can really sit there and say, I could recommend this to somebody else for pretty much anything. I don't think it's not a good mystery. It's not a good supernatural horror. Like, the only thing it's there for me is completion's sake. And it's not bad. It's not a bad Sidney Lumet film, but I wouldn't put it at the terms of good either. So I'll say a 6.5.
Yeah. I think I was hovering there, like in that same sort of range between 6.5 and 7 until the last like 10, 15 minutes. And then I really... it kind of plummeted for me a little bit. Like, I'm not going to like go super low because there's still a lot of skill involved. There's still a lot of talent here, and there's some good characters. But like, I think for me, I'm actually going down to just a flat 6. Is where I'm landing. So
that's fine.
Decent for reasons that are objectively good, but like ultimately, I was very frustrated by just how much I didn't get like the movie by the end.
Oh yeah. So. Yeah, this in a modern day setting, this would absolutely be one of those films that would get nominated for like one of the tertiary Academy Award things, where it's like, we want to recognize there's some technical quality here, but like, no one's getting Best Actor, no one's getting Best Picture. It's not getting one of them.
Now that you've said that, I bet someone won an award for this.
Oh, I mean, it won all the Tonys and stuff like that. Like I said,
I mean, the
actual
movie
itself. Yeah. Well, I guess I'll pull that up real quick. In the meantime, does this make the cut?
No.
Yeah, I could see the argument for cutting it close. I really think that it is right on the verge of that, but I can't put it there. Not on my own.
I think it's a no. I think it just doesn't make the cut. It is better than Anderson Tapes, but I don't think it's enough to be like teetering on the idea of it's under that. So
yeah. Also, it didn't get any Academy Award nominations. It had a New York Critics' Choice Award, but,
fair enough,
or nomination, not even the win.
I could have seen like an acting nomination or two. I could have seen that. It wouldn't have struck me wildly, but oh well. I thought it'd be funny if you looked it up and then it said, yeah, it got nominated for 5 things.
Oh wow, it's just this is a regular Suicide Squad going on here.
Hey, that's Academy Award winning.
Academy Award winning for costume design.
There was no Renaissance looking movies that year, so I guess Suicide Squad won. Anyway, so yeah, that actually wraps us up on Sidney Lumet season. Season 1, at the very least, we'll be back at some point with the season 2. Maybe after about a year or so, but we do have a Christmas season coming up. Just 4 episodes over December. And I guess technically the end of November, but like, yeah, when we're up to Christmas, we'll have 4 episodes, just different Christmas films, all of which are being voted for by our patrons at the voting tier, but just a nice variety of that. And then after that, we return once again to disaster movie season. Technically, this is like season 5 of disaster movies, because if you count Airport, which I kind of would, because it was a franchise of disaster movies from the 70s, we've had 2 70s disaster movie seasons. We've had 90 movies disaster season. We had Airport season. This makes this season 5, and this one kind of blends different eras together for different reasons. But we got that coming up for the start of the year. It's basically the tradition at the start of the year until we run out of disaster movies. The start of the year's disaster movie season.
It's so nice to be able to go into a new year, new hopes, new dreams, and see the world destroyed over and over and over again.
So that may be fun. We may see some actors creep over from some of these 70s and 60s movies we've done in the last few months. I
will say, out of all the disaster seasons we've done, this one has the most that I have already seen. So,
whoa, interesting. Interesting. So yeah, that is what's coming up over the next little while on Collector's Cut. Hopefully that sounds fun. Definitely a little bit later, perhaps, than I think, Sidney Lumet and 70s Thrillers were both, we're doing classic films where there's a chance we're finding some really great gems in there, and we have, which has been great. I don't know if that's going to be as true for disaster movie season or Christmas season. It's going to be more lighthearted affair, but that's okay. It gives us a little bit of rest before we get back to the serious stuff a little bit later. So that's cool. Lots of stuff going over on Ace, lots of stuff going over on Screams After Midnight. Check out those, and of course you can get bonus stuff, the bonus rating segments, ratings rundown by becoming a patron or a YouTube member. But the main thing you get, the big crown jewel of the bonus content, is Extra Reels, the monthly show that me and David do, where we review some of the worst things ever made. If that sounds like fun, or if you just want to support everything, thanks to everyone who already supports us. It is greatly appreciated. Helps keep all the content coming. And that's the show. That's Collector's Cut. Thank you very much for joining us. We do appreciate it. Keep watching movies, and if you can get it, it's always nice to have diplomatic immunity.